Hey friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and we've got a knife by FreeTiger. We've got the FT2102. It's a liner lock knife with D2 steel, and they say it's got a titanium coating on it. It's a nice light looking titanium coating on it. Titanium coating on D2 is a good thing. If you live somewhere where there's a lot of humidity and corrosion happens easily, a coating helps with that. We've got G10, comes in 3 colors. We've got a lanyard hole back here. We've got an inset of carbon fiber on there. And it's not a very big knife. It is over 3 inches in the blade though. So if you're looking for, a narrow, thin styling knife like this, you might be interested in this video. So stick around and check out this front flipper by FreeTiger. $25.99 American. I got mine from AliExpress. I've got a few links for AliExpress down below, referral links. I found out FreeTiger's got their own website now. They sell it on their ftKnives.com site for $25.99 as well. So 26 American shekels for this knife. Size comparison, here's the Ontario Rat 1. Oh, yep, I'm going to have to zoom back out. That's why it was zoomed out. So it's definitely a smaller knife. The Sanrenmu 110. It's a fairly small, I think it's trying to be sort of in the gentleman's folder kind of size knife. And that's what you've got. Now, have you noticed what's missing on this knife? Some of you are screaming at the screen, there ain't no pocket clip, Jake. And that's right, there's no pocket clip. I got this intentionally because I know I've got some viewers, and there's got to be more than just those who comment, who take all the pocket clips off their knives. They don't like pocket clips, they don't use them, and this is a knife where you take the pocket clip off, well, you don't have to, and there's no little hole left over where a pocket clip would have been. So this is a great choice for those guys and gals that don't like pocket clips. Well, how are you going to carry it then? Well, here's a really low budget way to carry it. This is from SmokyMountainKnifeWorks.com. It's $3 or $4 American dollars for this thing. Genuine leather, just stitched around. It's got a hole there, and you stick the knife in it. And when you want to use it, you pull the knife out. Now you can use a chain and hook that to your belt. So stuff this into your pocket, so that you won't lose it when you pull it out of your pocket or whatever. Or you can just leave it like this, drop it in your pocket. Or you can just drop the knife into your pocket. It really doesn't matter how you carry it. Some other way maybe, just let me know. The front flipper, I'm having a little bit tougher time doing it with my right hand right now because I've got 2 splits in my thumb right now. My skin must be drying out. It's really dry here in Alberta. And my skin's just splitting on my thumb, so it's a little tender that way. But, I normally do my front flippers with my thumb right here, and there's that split. You can see the dark spot, probably. So, if I don't flip this thing quite right sometimes, it's probably because of that, because it's just a little bit tender. We've got liner lock. Lockup is very good. I like that lockup on a liner lock. It's engaged. There's no lock. Blade play, no lock rock. It's quite well done. The alignment when it's closed, right down the middle, just like it should be. So that's well done. The flipper, it's got some smoothed out jimping on the spine right there. That's all the jimping there is on the knife. And yeah, it doesn't give a lot of extra grip. But you don't really need a lot of extra grip on this knife as long as you aren't going to be piercing it into something, that you might suddenly come to a stop and your hand goes over and gets a nice slice on it. We've got a nice shallow belly here, a straight section, really nicely sized sharpness choil right there. big swedge that goes most of the length of the knife, flat grind that comes 3/4 up the spine of the knife. It's got a distal taper, and it starts tapering, about halfway down the blade. It's not super thin at the tip, but fairly thin at the tip. And D2 is, more brittle than most stainless steels, so don't be prying things with, the tip of this knife. Or any knife, unless you absolutely have to do some prying. It's a decent blade. This nice straight back, quite nicely done. It's nice and thin behind the grind. It's sharpened, fairly well. Not great, but not terrible. And it's okay. The handle scales, they are narrow. It's mostly getting thicker all the way back. And we've got a backspacer and a lanyard pin right there. Hardware. We've got blue anodized screws. I have not had good experience with blue anodized screws. Ganzo did it a number of years ago, and it was just terrible. But we've got decent screws. These aren't your typical button screws. These are milled screws. They've got a shoulder on them and then a flat top. So it's not just a round button screw. And they stick out a little bit. So if you don't use a paracord, the screws actually help you a little bit, to grab it. You get a little bit of texture right there, and you can pull the knife out if you're grabbing it properly. I was looking at my screen while I was trying to do it, so I wasn't watching what I was doing. So I don't mind these screws that much. At first, they looked like they were button screws, but I took a closer look at them, and they're quite nice. But they are T6 back here. That's a T8. I'm assuming it's got a D-shaped pivot pin there. It's quite nice. It does make a little bit of an odd noise when I do the lock release, and it was kind of hanging up a little bit right there. It wasn't releasing smoothly every time. And it's releasing smoothly now, and I fixed it with, I made a little video about this stuff. This stuff's really great. I found out about this from Nick. I'm just drawing a blank. Anyways, he suggested this stuff, and it works great. It's an antioxidant compound for electrical connections called OxGuard. I got mine from Amazon. I'll leave links down below. I just take a Q-tip and I cut off the cotton swab, so I've got basically that hard paper roll, and I just get a little bit of this stuff on there. I just dab just a tiny bit of this on there and wipe it onto the end of the blade where the lock meets up, and then just open and close it 10-15 times and let it sit. I let it sit in the locked open position so that both surfaces have contact with this stuff for a while, and the next day it started working just fine. So really good stuff for you to get if you're a knife enthusiast, if you want to get rid of lock stick, and it gets rid of it in the long term. So it's much better than just putting a little pencil lead on there. That works for a little while, but then you have to do it again. And this stuff's, I'm calling it a permanent solution. I really like it. Now the lock release, the surfaces here are almost parallel. You can't really get your thumb underneath there. There's a little bit of a swedge cutaway right here to help you get your thumb in there, but then it's just that 90-degree angle there. And when it was catching and not releasing properly, that edge was annoying me a little bit, and you can see a little bit of skin residue on there already. I wish they would have, the same kind of chamfering they did here, if they would have done it on the side of the lock release as well. That would make it easier to disengage that lock. Not a big deal at all. You could just take the knife apart and use like a Dremel tool and chamfer that edge a little bit, and then it would be even better. But it's okay. The flipper tab, there you go. You can see how far it sticks out. It's rounded over, and like I said, it's smooth. So, whoops, I was looking at the screen again instead of watching what I was doing. It works okay. It's a little bit rounded over, so it's not quite as grippy as I'd like it to be, but it works just fine as a front flipper. There you go. I hit the tabletop that time. There you go. So now it's time for me to take it apart and show you how it's constructed. I just took the handle scale off. These screws come off quite nicely. There's no residue from Loctite in there. That's quite nice. I'm disappointed how dirty that is. That's quite dirty. I can see fingerprints in there, fingerprints over here. That's not very well done. Let me just try to wipe it clean a little bit. Yeah, see, all they had to do was have clean hands when they're assembling this, and it would look a whole lot nicer. So this is the very first time I'm taking it apart. So that's a little bit disappointing. I don't like having, you know, knives dirty when I get them. So there we go. So that's a fairly tight fit. And see, you can see this side now is all dirty. So I don't like that. I wish knives were assembled in a clean environment. So the action on this thing is pretty good, but I'm sure it would be even smoother if that would be clean there. See, that side's got fingerprints on there too. And here's the race. They put a race in there as well. And we've got very tiny ball bearings. I'm going to clean these up. I'm going to properly lubricate them with my Lucas fishing reel oil that I like so much. Whoops, the back spacer fell down. I'll clean that up. So yeah, I find it interesting that there's a race on each side. If they wouldn't have milled this out, see how they milled that out there? If they would have just kept the liners flush and hardened them, then they'd be fine. But I'm assuming they didn't harden the liners, which is why they put races in, which is just fine. And the pin, it's got a round pin there, so let's just take that pin out. And yeah, it's just around there. It's just such a tight fit that it was not free spinning, but it's just a pressure fit. There's the back spacer, and the back spacer fits over those pins. So there you go. Before I go on to the measurements, yeah, it's a lot smoother now that I've oiled it. Like I said, this is what I use, Lucas fishing reel oil. Get that from Amazon as well. It's a nice budget oil, great stuff in my opinion. I did put some skin cream on my thumb between these seams, and now it's really smooth. It was slipping right over that. It is quite smooth, this texture up here. So if you like having lots of grip on your flipper, this knife does not have that. The badging on it, yeah, the badging's quite big, and it's right there on the main bevel. I wish they made it smaller and stuck it up on the ricasso. That would have been nicer. All right, now it's time to do all the specs, measurements, and stuff. D2 steel, it's usually got a Rockwell of around 60, sometimes 59. Could be a little less, could be a little bit more. From my cutting experience with this knife, it feels like it's fairly hard. I haven't sharpened it yet, so I'm not sure. I haven't needed to. Well, it's not that sharp now, but it was a sharpness of 75 best from the factory. That's really, really well done. That was quite sharp. The weight of this knife, 68 grams, 2.35 ounces. If they would have skeletonized it, it could have been even less. Cutting edge length, 77.4 millimeters, 3.05 inches. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the G10, 81.3 millimeters, 3.2 inches. Thickness of the blade, 2.44 millimeters. That's 96 thousandths of an inch, so just under 1/10 of an inch. It's a nice, light, thin blade. The blade depth this way, along a lot of the knife, it's the same depth, 14.9 millimeters, which is 0.586 of an inch. How thin is it behind the grind? Well, along most of it, it's about 0.42 millimeters, which is 16.5 thousandths of an inch. It's one of the reasons why it cuts so well. And it does, it cuts quite well. The grind angles, this side across, 3/4 of it is about 19.5 degrees, and about 3/4 of this is about 20.5 degrees. But this 20.5 turns into 19.9, so very subtle change. But this side, the 19.5 turns into 17.4 degrees here. So it's fairly well sharpened. But, humans just have a tough time making everything consistent when they, hold a knife by hand and, draw it across a sharpening surface. It's just the nature of hand sharpening. The handle length, that is 101.3 millimeters, 3.99 inches. So yeah, 4 inches, 3 inches. We've got a grip area in here. It's right around 10 centimeters. It's just a bit less than 4 inches. The thickness of the handle, right on the surface of the inlaid carbon fiber there, 12.03 millimeters. That's 0.474 of an inch. Nice and small. When it's closed and when it's open, the widest spot on the handle is the same, because right here near the end, well, for a fair distance along here, it's very much the same. 18.9 millimeters, which is 0.744 of an inch. And I did it again. The total length of this knife, it's just over 7 inches. The actual number is on the screen, and 183.1 millimeters. So yeah, not bad. The specs and measurements and stuff come out quite well. What are my thoughts of this thing? If you're looking for a nice little sort of gentleman's folder kind of knife that is budget class and doesn't have a pocket clip, maybe this is one of the knives you should consider, the FT2102. Since it's got a titanium coating on the blade, I'm not minding so much about the D2, although I'm getting tired of D2, and I say it quite often. We've got good alignment. We've got decent action. Once you clean it out, it's even better. Lockup's okay. The anodization on the screws, I think that's going to flake off more easily than I want it to, but it hasn't shown any signs of wear yet, so that's okay. Nice lanyard pin option right here. That's quite well done. The body screws, it's not a button screw. It's a little bit higher grade screw, so that's not bad. And it is a T6, but it's a good quality T6. There's very little play in there, and it came undone quite well, so I'm not too upset. I wish they'd use T8s, though. The cons. The access of the lock release here is a little limited, and when you get in there, you've got a crisp 90-degree edge that you got to push on. It had little lock stick, but I got rid of that. Blue anodized screws, like I said, I'm not too happy about those. No skeletonizing. I wish they would have done a little bit of skeletonizing on it. Moved the balance point closer to the pivot pin. I like the balance point to be just behind the pivot pin, right where your index finger goes. That's where I want it to be balanced. So they could have done that, I think. The show side handle scale on this side here, they could have put a couple holes in it, I think. The badging's big. I don't like that either. So that's pretty much what I think of this knife. It's not bad. It's pretty good for 25 American dollars. Do I recommend it? Sure. Just know what you're getting before you buy it. And to know what you're getting before you buy it, you watch Canadian Cutting Edge, and I thank you very much for doing that. If you appreciate all the help I do giving you all these specs information about knives, consider helping me out. I would appreciate that very much. You can support the channel by sponsoring me through Patreon or YouTube memberships. If you support my channel, you get first dibs on all the sales that I do, knife sales. I give you guys 48 hours access to all those sales. And one of you wins a knife every single month. I do a random draw from all my supporters, and you get to pick which knife that I reviewed in the previous month that you will take home as your very own. Thank you very much. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them down below, or you can email me directly at canadiancuttingedge@gmail.com. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb. And bye for now.